Hi gang, Rob here, coming to you on 14 November 2016 with a knife review of a traditional pocket knife, one-off custom variety. This one by Esnyx Customs. Yeah, Esnyx Customs, that is my buddy Evan Nicolaides. Evan has had only one knife reviewed on the TheApostleP channel thus far. It was one of his mid-techs made for a private label. That was the JBF Champlin and Son Electric Barlow. Not Evan's favorite knife he's ever made. So we have a couple of his full customs in-house. This being the first one. We actually have three of them. We're going to look at this gorgeous Serpentine split back Whittler. In Mammoth bark ivory. All steel construction with S35 VN blades. Is that not a stunning piece of work? Wow. And guys, for those of you who are not familiar, Evan Nicolaides out of Sarasota, Florida, I don't believe is yet 30 years of age. Only really been a traditional knives collector and aficionado for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. And he thought, man, with my artistic background and a little bit of machining ability, I think I can make these. So he has studied hard the fruits of Bill Howard at Great Eastern Cutlery with help from Randy Bell, the chief engineer at GEC. He has also managed to ingratiate himself at the Wilfred Works, shop of legendary Tony Bose and his son Reese. And Evan has learned a lot from the Boses. This, guys, is Evan's first successful attempt, his first finished split back Whittler pattern. You know, Tony said in one of our videos we did when I was down there, I tell new knife makers when they start getting bored, start adding blades. And Evan did that. He's been making a lot of single blade stuff the last few years. Not only did he add blades, but he didn't make a Stockman or a Congress or even a two-bladed standard jack. He just decided, if I'm going to add blades, I'll just make me a split-back Whittler. Go big or stay home. All right, guys, let's start looking at some specifics of this knife. First of all, to get you a little size frame of reference, what we have is a 3 5/8 inch long frame, and we will set that down on the table right next to the number 38 Grinling Whittler from GEC, and I think you'll be able to see that the 38 is just a bit longer. 3 5/8 here, 3 3/4 on the 38. Main blade lengths also a little different. We have a 2 3/4 inch main blade on the number 38 GEC and a 2 5/8 inch main clip blade on the Esnyx. So the knife is just a little smaller than the Grinling Whittler, but you can see the influence of the 38 pattern, can't you? And of course it is a clip point main, long pull, cut swedge, and the secondaries are a coping blade and a broad coping blade, fairly short in length. We nicknamed this knife Nubber because of the diminutive length of the coping blade And you'll notice, let me open that to its fullest. And the other secondary, of course, is the pen. Nice pen. Perfect spear profile on that pen blade. Nice length. And now you'll get an idea that the pen blade is a little bit longer than the coping. That's either a mistake because Evan didn't have enough stock left to make a blade the same size as the pen, or, as you heard him say in my video that Wilfred works, it really lets you get down on that cutting edge for some intense fine work. No matter, if Tony Bowes wouldn't have seen that and pointed it out, I would have looked at this knife for a week and never noticed that the coping blade was shorter than the pen. Blades on this knife are of Crucible S35 VN steel, and they are finished to about 1,000 grit satin. Not polished. They sort of look like it in certain lights, but that's about 1,000 grit hand-rubbed satin running horizontal on those blades. They are ground super thin. Here's a little added something. This might mean something to some of you, but this knife is going to come brand new from its maker, Evan Nicolaides of Esnyx Customs, from the maker with an TheApostleP edge. All three blades are sharpened by me up through 1/2 micron diamond on a leather strop. And I did these at 20 degrees per side, just basically to show off the thinness of the blades. So, you're not going to see a lot of mirror polished bevel. What you're going to see is a really, really nice thinly ground blade that was just made to cut. Give you a little idea what that looks like. So Evan Hafted this knife, basically finished it out at Tony's place with the intention of giving it to me to bring home to do a video on. Wow. And he was just about to put the edge on, and he looked at me and he said, you want to sharpen this? And I said, you bet I do. So all three blades are wearing my edge, which I think is kind of neat. Evan's first Whittler has my edge on it. I took a little extra time with it. I think it came out great. Now, Evan normally does a satin finish on his bolsters and a matte finish on his cover material, basically a satin. And he and I talked, and I think he was leaning this way anyway, but he went with more of a polish to show off the figuring in the Mammoth bark, and then carried that through the bolsters also, which I think was the right call on this knife. All right, let's take a look at some details, shall we? First, the main blade. Made from 1/8 stock with a step grind, so because that fat tang is running on both spring ends. You guys have seen me break down the split back Whittler before. 2 springs run the main blade. They converge off the end of that split back spacer, the wedge back spacer, and then they converge at the tang of the main blade. So an 1/8 inch thick up to the step, and then it comes down to probably 90 thousandths ish, and then it's full flat ground from there with a cut swedge and a long pull. Just perfectly executed. I noticed something about this blade, and I don't think Evan did this on purpose, but I think it's kind of cool. On the mark side, the clip point, and you'll notice that profile looks awfully familiar. I think it is very, very similar to the Tom's Choice Barlow clip, which would make sense. If Tony Bowes is the most influential maker in Evan's knife making life, Charlie Campagna is the most influential historian. So this clip looks a lot like a T.C. Barlow clip. Maybe not quite as much material over the swedge, which again just shows off Evan's skill. Look at that just tiny little ribbon of steel on top of the swedge. But that cut swedge resembles a GEC swedge. If we come over to the other side, there seems to be a little more curvature at the base of the swedge. Very reminiscent of a Tony Bowes swedge. Kind of like a Lanny's clip swedge, I thought. They're just a little different, and you can see from the top that the symmetry at the beginning of those swedges is not quite perfect, and that's why we'll just say Evan did that on purpose. But the grinds are beautiful, beautifully straight. Thickness behind the edge, super consistent. If you look at the width of my edge bevel, it just stays dead the same. Tip to hilt, just beautifully done. What a slicer this thing's going to be. Plunge grinds and sharpening choils are executed to perfection. And we have no half stop on the main blade, as is standard in the split back Whittler. And we'll get in here and show you the mill relieved washers that the blade rides on. So you can see about right there where the mill enters the blade well, or the inside of the liner, and it leaves a round raised washer in the stainless steel liner that the blade tang runs on. That reduces the amount of friction, and it also keeps the blade tang from being scratched by the liners as it rotates. So you won't see any scratches in the blade tang. You know, I think Evan's made nothing but half stop knives up until now. He's got just perfect cam action on this no stop main blade tang. So the pull coming out is probably a 6, maybe a 7. Then once we get past 90 degrees, it sort of increases dramatically, and then it snaps open, and it stays open with great authority, which is what you want in a Whittler. Just perfectly executed. Now that mill relieved washer is not only present on the main blade, but also, as we come look at the secondaries, you'll see that it's on both liners and also on the center liner. Now if that's not enough, now we're just going to show off. Both pivots not only have mill relieved liners for simulated washers, they're also bushing pivots. There is a hardened bronze bushing that goes around that pivot pin that is in length 1/1000th of an inch longer than the thickness of the blade tang. And if you guys watched my Tony Bowes interview series, that means that when you're putting this knife together, mushrooming the ends of the pivot pins into the tapered holes in the bolsters, you can beat on those things, as Tony said, like a rented mule, and you're never going to put the blade in a bind. So you can go with lighter spring tension, which gives you sweeter action. You're not trying to overcome any kind of a bind in the blade. And I'm telling you what, the walk and talk on this thing is absolutely beautiful. The secondaries are nice and light and crisp. The main blade is smooth and robust, just like it ought to be. One thing Evan did that I think is a little different, and I'll show you this coping blade. Normally when you do a split back Whittler, you want there to be more swedge to the inside of the knife, which is the side you're looking at. So notice we've got a pretty aggressive swedge on the inside compared to the outside of that blade. But I think I would like to see that swedge come down a little farther. Evan's knife, which I just poked myself with, ow, will rub just a hair if I try to open the secondaries with the main blade closed. Super tight. And by the way, when we're talking about tight, let's look. Look at that perfect centering on the main blade. Look how tightly it's packed into that frame between the tangs of the secondaries. Now when it's all closed up, blades don't rub, the secondaries don't rub the main blade, and the secondaries do not rub the liners. Well, Evan, since your knife has now cut me a little bit anyway, I guess I'm gonna have to own. No, I can't afford it. Sorry. Now let's look at the hafting and the finishing of the handle. So none of these pins are spun. They're all hand set and then sanded and polished flush. Bolsters are beautifully rounded over and beautifully finished. The transitions with the Mammoth bark are as perfect as you can get for two materials that are widely differing in hardness. No gaps. Beautifully done. The hafting is beautiful. On the main blade side, the back springs are both flush when the knife is closed, and when open, perfectly flush. Let's leave that open. Both back springs on the secondaries are flush. Flush at half stop for the cope. Flush at half stop for the pen. Flush at open for the pen. Wow, that is really impressive. All positions flush. That's a well hafted knife. There was one finish element, and I would imagine Evan will correct this before it ships out, and I don't even know if the camera will show it. But the finishing on the spine of the main blade is just a little off. There's sort of two different finishes, and the knife sort of, there, I think it sort of goes off, goes down into the into a different plane on the left side as you're looking at it. That I'm sure Evan can fix up before this one finds a home. But guys, there are doggone few things to complain about. And remember, this is a totally start to finish handmade one-off custom. And man, is it gorgeous. And it's a great size. By the way, this knife is available. Remember, S35 blades and Mammoth bark ivory covers, all steel construction. 3-blade, genuine split back Whittler. By the way, that center liner is a 1/16, tapering down to just over 10 thousandths. This one is for sale. It is not made to order, and it is not spoken for. I will be sending it back to Evan. I will include his contact information in the description of this video. And if you're interested in purchasing this knife, do get a hold of him. He'll want to put his finishing touches on it and give it a last inspection before sending it out to a customer. But I think we're going to be looking at $11.95 for this knife. I say worth every penny. Just superbly, superbly executed. Just a couple little things that let you know it's handmade. Man, what a gorgeous knife. Thought you'd like to see it. That's all for this one, my friends. Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And remember, the Word and Evans Whittler are sharp.